Sharks, the ocean's ancient predators, have long been feared and misunderstood. Are they the monsters we imagine, or instinct-driven creatures navigating their world? With powerful jaws and finely tuned senses, these apex hunters rarely intentionally target humans. Yet we persist in viewing them as man-eaters. Exploring their behavior, a different story emerges, one of awe, respect, and the delicate balance required to coexist in their domain. Here are 6 compelling stories that challenge our perceptions and deepen our understanding of these remarkable creatures. One afternoon in 2011, Amelia Sinclair, a 32-year-old marketing executive from New York, decided it would be an exhilarating experience to cool off in the crystal-clear waters off the coast of her resort in Nassau, the Bahamas. Amelia had always loved the ocean and became enchanted with the vast array of sea life present in these tropical waters. She had just drifted off into a peaceful float when she saw a dorsal fin rising through the waves not far from her. Amelia exclaimed, looking at what seemed to be a dolphin filled with excitement. Dolphins were her favorite animals. She hoped to spot some during her vacation. She didn't hesitate but started swimming towards the fin, eager to get a closer look at the creature. The closer she got, though, the more erratic and aggressive the dolphin movements began to seem to Amelia than what she would expect. The dorsal fin also appeared much larger than that of a typical dolphin. Then a huge gray body broke the surface, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. It was no dolphin at all, but a huge bull shark, one of the ocean's deadliest predators. Amelia's heart raced as she realized the gross mistake she had just made. Bull sharks were extremely territorial and known to be aggressive toward humans, responsible for many unprovoked attacks every year. She did realize, though, that she would get away from the shark fast. It was charging toward her with its powerful physique. Fast thinking, Amelia looked around her and saw a large driftwood floating nearby. She grabbed and held it out, fending off the shark's repeated advances with a makeshift weapon. The bull shark thrashed and circled her, its black eyes locked on its potential prey. Amelia struggled to fend off the relentless shark, her arms growing weary from the desperate effort. Just as she felt her strength fading and hope slipping away, the distant hum of a boat engine reached her ears, signaling a glimmer of rescue when she needed it most. A small charter fishing vessel had spotted the commotion and was racing toward her. The captain and his first mate began yelling and throwing a life preserver toward Amelia as the boat drew closer. She gratefully grabbed the line and they pulled her to safety just as the shark lunged in her direction. Finally, safe aboard, Amelia collapsed, shaking from adrenaline and fear of her near-death experience. The captain radioed his report to the Coast Guard, and soon, a team of marine biologists and emergency responders was on the scene. Amelia was rushed to a local hospital where doctors checked her up and treated the minor cuts and scrapes she had sustained from the shark attack. She was kept overnight for observation, much to the relief of her worried parents back home in New York, whom she got in touch with quickly to recount the harrowing ordeal. Amelia told the doctors that she could not believe she had mistaken a shark for a dolphin and thought she was going to die out there. The bull shark was much bigger and more aggressive than she had ever imagined. Amelia was grateful to the fishermen who saved her in time. The marine biologists responding to the scene were astounded that Amelia could keep the shark at bay with the driftwood that long. They commended her presence of mind and bravery in the face of such a dangerous predator. Dr. Sofia Martinez, the lead marine biologist on the scene, explained that bull sharks were among the most aggressive shark species, responsible for a disproportionately high number of attacks on humans, and that Miss Sinclair was able to hold the shark at bay for several minutes before help arrived was truly remarkable. She was very lucky to be alive. The next day, still in shock but relieved, Amelia told her story to the local authorities in the hospital. She gave a full statement, hoping that her experience would allow others to learn how dangerous it was not to recognize sharks as being different from other fish. Yet despite the psychological scarring, Amelia refused to allow the incident to destroy her love for the ocean. She pledged always to be better informed about marine life and more careful when venturing into unfamiliar waters. For the remainder of her holiday, she avoided all beaches with large numbers of sharks. Upon her return to New York, Amelia began to appreciate the power and unpredictability of apex predators in the ocean. Certainly the trauma from her encounter with the bull shark would not just disappear. but she knew she now had the appreciation that was needed all along. Respect for what lay below, both in terms of wonder and danger. An idyllic 2014 kayaking holiday with the Williamson family down the Daly River in the Northern Territory of Australia has become any family's worst nightmare after the kayakers entered saltwater crocodile territory. Michael and Sarah Williamson, with their 12-year-old son Jack, had been luxuriating in the lush, winding waterways, diving headfirst into the wildest beauty the Australian outback had to offer. As the paddling extended further upstream into the estuary, all the excitement within the family members suddenly turned into anxiety. The earlier attractive water became murky, and the vegetation was fast, giving long shadows along the shore. Sarah turned to Michael and shared her uneasy feelings about the surroundings. At first, Jack could only make out that most dreadful confirmation of their worst fears, a half-submerged log off the bank. Dismayed, they suddenly saw it was nothing but the unmistakable shape of a huge saltwater crocodile, with only its half-submerged eyes out of the water. With great self-restraint, Michael instructed his family to stay calm, begin paddling toward shore, and not make any sudden movements. They did just that, paddling slowly, not taking their eyes off the unmoving predator. Every second it seemed like they would make it to shore without any problems. But almost immediately, all those dreams came crashing down as the crocodile lunged at them suddenly in the next instant, with frightful velocity. Michael screamed at his family, asking them to paddle for their lives, the ferocious paddling turning away from rowing with wild abandon as they splashed water in the air and rowed towards the nearest bank. But the effort proved in vain. The crocodile matched their pace and was faster. Its bulk easily cleaved the water. In a pulse-pounding moment, the creature sprang, its enormous jaws clamping onto the back of Michael and Jack's kayak. The force of the attack sent both father and son tumbling into the depths, and Sarah watched helplessly in horror as her husband and son disappeared beneath the surface. She had already arrived near the bank in her kayak. The paternal instincts came to the fore as Michael managed to panic in the water. Breaking the surface and gasping, he looked around for Jack. As luck would have it, Jack's head broke the water's surface a few meters away, then coughed and spluttered. Michael shouted to Sarah to throw them the paddles from her kayak. As Michael and Jack grabbed the paddles, the water splashed around them. The crocodile had finished their kayak and was now on its living target. Michael told Jack to keep close to him as he was getting ready to fight off this creature. Ancient, predatory eyes watched the pitiful humans as the great beast charged. With all his strength, Michael struck the reptile's nose, and though Jack shivered with fear, he boldly followed his father's lead. Father and son swung at the gator's muzzle together as the menace lunged again. Sarah stayed in her kayak, torn between the drive to save her family and the realization that she would just end up dead in the water if she got in. That was when she decided to splash as much as possible with her paddle to distract the crocodile. Michael took the opportunity as the croc was about to let go of his meal and instructed Jack to swim toward the shore. As Sarah swam to the bank, she noticed a small rocky island only a couple of yards from the beach and motioned them toward it as it was much nearer than the bank. The family fought helplessly, with Sarah paddling toward Jack and Michael, prepared to whack the crocodile away if it pushed closer. The crocodile lunged one more time as they neared the island, and its jaws snapped shut just a few inches from Jack's legs. In one last surge of furious protection, Michael smacked his paddle at the crocodile's head with increasing force, hitting it on the side of its head and momentarily stunning it. It was all they needed, his tiny moment of hesitation. With a final burst of energy, they hauled themselves onto the jagged shore of the small island. Gasping for breath, they collapsed on the rough ground, their bodies trembling from sheer exhaustion and overwhelming fear. Michael quickly checked to see if everyone was all right, while Sarah, consumed by relief, clung tightly to Jack, vowing never to let him go. In what seemed a never-ending day, the family tried to nap on a little haven near the rocky island, where the sun had started setting and casting long shadows on the water. The crocodile did not move further. It just sat a fixed presence with its prehistoric eyes, never leaving Sarah. She blamed Michael for what had happened. It was meant to be a fun family vacation, but now it has become a nightmare. Michael apologized for not researching the area better, but Jack told his father that no one could have known about the crocodiles. The sounds of the Australian wild seemed amplified, merging with Jack's soft whines as he shivered, cold and wet. Sarah tried to comfort him with stories of happier times, recalling better experiences. The family shared a quiet laugh, remembering the infamous sunburn that had left Michael's neck and back painfully red during a previous beach trip. The memory brought a brief moment of warmth and connection, easing the tension of their current ordeal. Michael told them he'd check the island's perimeter to find a better place to signal for help. While he was out, Jack asked his mother if they were going to die on this island. Sarah pacified her little boy, saying that more often than not, being brave doesn't mean that a person is not scared, just that he should have done what he needed. Michael came back, assuring his family that the island was not that big, but he had found a slight rise where they would be recognized easily by anyone looking around for them. What followed was long hours of silent and motionless watch over the crocodile, sometimes diving under the water and coming up again nearer the island, testing their nerve. As the first light of dawn began to break, Jack heard the distant sound of a helicopter engine. As the helicopter appeared over the tree line with its searchlight across the river, the family began waving their arms aloft and shouting at the tops of their heads. There was a harrowing moment when it almost seemed that the helicopter would bypass them altogether. But then the beams swiveled toward them as it caught their little island with its cast of light. A rescue worker was winched onto the island, quickly confirming their identities before rapidly assessing the situation. He urged them to move quickly. The crocodile remained in the area. One by one, the family was lifted into the helicopter, each feeling relief. As they ascended, they finally caught a glimpse of the full size of the colossal, prehistoric-looking creature that had relentlessly pursued them, its massive form a stark reminder of their narrow escape. As they all huddled together inside the helicopter, the family was clutching on one another, bringing home the full realization of their ordeal and how close they were to death that afternoon. The pilot said they were lucky, as few people survived encounters with saltwater crocodiles. The Williamson were fortunate to have survived the ordeal as they left the island with the crocodile still roaming in the waters, probably looking for other prey. The bond within the Williamson family had been tested and solidified unimaginably. Their kayaking trip might have turned deadly, but love, dedication, and determination had seen it through. The memory of their encounter with the crocodile would be etched into them forever, a testament to their resiliency and the power of family. During the summer of 2005, Jake Anderson moved to his favorite underwater wonderland, the fine kelp forests of Monterey, California. The 32-year-old marine biologist had spent hundreds of hours studying the vast life of the sea, but had never seen one of the most elusive and captivating creatures of the deep, the giant Pacific octopus. As Jake drifted down into the thick kelp canopy, his mind was racing about how he would document this complex ecosystem. He had heard rumors of enormous octopuses hovering in the dark, although he hadn't seen one with his naked eyes. Then, as he swam through an exceptionally thick patch of kelp, he felt a sudden, sharp tug on his ankle. Instinctively, Jake looked down to see a giant tentacle wrapped around his leg, pulling him deeper into the forest. His heart began racing as he realized he was in the grip of a mighty octopus. In only moments, the 8 strong limbs of the creature wrapped around his leg, and Jake could feel a beak, for tearing open the shells of crabs and clams close to his flesh. Panic set in as he struggled to free himself. He shook his leg, trying to break the creature's grip, but the octopus held tight. Jake knew he had to think fast. He was running out of oxygen. Jake went for his dive knife, but every move was challenging in the thick kelp forest. As the octopus pulled him deeper, Jake thought quickly about escaping this difficult situation. He had never fathomed a time when his fascination with the marine world would have him in such immediate danger. Fueled with adrenaline, the determination to survive burned, but the strength in those octopus arms was immense. His hand struck a large boulder on the sea floor, which he clutched firmly and swung against the octopus's head. The blow connected with a dull thud, and for just a second the octopus broke its hold. Jake used that second to kick his leg free, but then the octopus regained its senses and came at him once again. Knowing he was running out of time, Jake desperately swam toward the surface, his strokes retarded by the heavy kelp. He was being pursued by the octopus with long tentacles reaching out, trying to snare back its prey. Jake could feel the suction cups of the creature rake across his skin, and he knew he needed to make one last push to get away. As he broke through the surface, Jake gasped for air, his lungs on fire from the effort. He looked around until he saw the octopus's tentacles slipping beneath the waves, an outstanding example of tenacity and vigor in a creature. Shaken by the experience, he swam back toward shore with all possible speed, his mind reeling from the narrow escape from death. Once ashore, Jake related this harrowing incident to his colleagues at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, where he worked as a marine biologist. The story spread all around the public imagination, captivated by the account of that elusive nature, the giant Pacific octopus. The experience haunted him. He had always known how heavy and unpredictable the ocean's punch could be, but this encounter had brought him face to face with a giant Pacific octopus. He finally decided to continue his research to learn more about such wonderful creatures and their location in the balance of these sensitive ecosystems of the kelp forests. Jake's brush with the giant Pacific octopus had left an indelible mark on his psyche. As he lay in bed that night, the memory of the creature's tentacles coiling around his leg replaying vividly in his mind, he couldn't help but feel a profound sense of respect and wonder. The ocean, it seemed, was filled with wonders yet to be discovered, and Jake knew that this harrowing encounter would forever shape his future as a marine biologist. With a renewed passion and determination, he resolved to continue his research, determined to unravel the mysteries of the giant Pacific octopus and the remarkable ecosystem it called home. For Jake, the kelp forests of Monterey would forever hold a special and slightly ominous place in his heart. It was a brisk morning in the year 2009 along the rugged Oregon coast, where the sound of crashing waves and the salty tang of the sea air permeated the air. A 28-year-old avid surfer, Anna Schofield, was eager to catch the perfect wave before the crowds arrived. She had been surfing this stretch of coastline for years. Still, that day she was about to encounter a shocking and terrifying experience that would forever change her perspective on the ocean's unpredictable inhabitants. As Anna paddled out on her sleek turquoise surfboard, she couldn't help but feel a sense of exhilaration. The water was colder than usual, but the prospect of riding a clean, unbroken wave was too enticing to ignore. She had heard whispers of aggressive sea lions in the area, but dismissed the rumors, confident in her ability to navigate the ocean's currents. Suddenly, a massive shape emerged from the depths, slamming into the side of Anna's board with tremendous force. Taken by surprise, she struggled to regain her balance as she witnessed a massive bull-like sea lion propel itself into the air, its jaws wide open. In a split second, the animal latched onto Anna's leg, sinking its sharp teeth deep into her flesh. Panic surged through Anna's veins as the sea lion's powerful jaws tightened around her limb. She fought to keep her head above the water, kicking and flailing desperately to free herself from the creature's grasp. The pain was excruciating, and Anna could feel the warm blood trickling down her leg, mingling with the cold seawater. Anna's surfboard shattered as the sea lion thrashed about, leaving her no means of escape. She knew she had to act quickly to survive this vicious attack. Mustering all her strength, she began to punch and claw at the animal's face, desperately trying to pry its jaws open. The sea lion, driven by its territorial instincts, refused to let go. It continued to drag Anna deeper into the churning waves, its massive body twisting and turning as it sought to subdue its prey. Anna's lungs burned, and her vision began to blur, but she refused to give up, her survival instinct overriding the pain and exhaustion. With a final, desperate effort, Anna managed to land a solid blow to the sea lion's nose, causing the animal to release its grip. Gasping for air, she began to frantically swim towards the shore, her injured leg trailing behind her. The sea lion, still agitated, circled her, waiting for another opportunity to strike. Anna's muscles ached and her leg throbbed with every stroke, but she refused to let the sea lion catch her again. Summoning every ounce of her strength, she pushed forward, her eyes fixed on the distant shoreline. As she neared the beach, She could see the silhouettes of bystanders who had witnessed the attack and were rushing to her aid. With a final desperate lunge, Anna reached the shallow water, collapsing onto the sand as the concerned onlookers surrounded her. The paramedics arrived moments later, quickly assessing her injuries and rushing her to the nearest hospital. She recovered slowly, and after 2 weeks she had recovered fully. In the aftermath of the attack, Anna's life was forever changed. The deep bite wounds on her leg would take months to heal, and the psychological trauma would linger long after the physical scars had faded. But through it all, she remained grateful to have survived the encounter with the territorial sea lion, a reminder of the unpredictable and sometimes dangerous nature of the ocean's inhabitants. It was 2010, one of those sun-dappled days in the Florida Keys. The turquoise waters of the Atlantic were beckoning to the scores of divers and spearfishermen who came to this famed diving destination. Among them was 42-year-old Eddie Grayson, who had over 10 years as a professional spearfisherman. His wetsuit-clad form glided effortlessly through the shallowing depths, carpeted with coral boulders, while looking for his next prize catch. The Florida Keys was a real spearfishing paradise, full of abundant, highly sought-after species: grouper, snapper, and other prized fish. Over the years, he had learned how to read his quarry's shifting currents and movements, striking with pinpoint precision. That day, he was determined to bag a few good-sized groupers and return them to his local seafood market, which was in high demand. An hour of patience detailed sweeping over the reefs and ledges was rewarded as Eddie's sharp eyes finally locked onto a large grouper, hovering over a big, jagged coral head. He slowly and silently positioned himself, took good care in aiming, and speared the fish with a mighty thrust of his spear gun through the midsection. Pleased with his catch, he started swimming upward, his prized grouper in tow. A searing, sinking pain suddenly shot through Eddie's right arm, and with a muffled cry of agony, he dropped the grouper, which tumbled back into the azure depths. Whirling in panic, he turned to find himself face to face with a massive barracuda just an arm's length away. Its gaping jaws, lined with razor-sharp teeth, seemed poised for another strike, ready to deliver a deadly blow. Eddie's heart pounded in his chest as he stared into the predatory eyes of the fearsome fish. This barracuda was not going to back down. Known for their aggressive, predatory nature and flash attacks, this one had probably been attracted by the smell of blood from the speared grouper, and now mistook the spearfisherman for its next meal. Eddie's heart began to race as he realized how precarious the situation he had landed in. Barracudas are among the most vicious apex predators, and a full-on attack by one would be fatal. He needed to think fast to fend off the barracuda and return safely to his boat. Without hesitation, Eddie thrashed and kicked violently to put as much space as he could between himself and the relentless predator circling him. The barracuda, undeterred, kept after him with chomping jaws inches from Eddie's quivering, unprotected body. He felt the icy, hard scales of the barracuda almost scraping his skin, as it had done many times already in its attempt to clamp down on him. With a surge of adrenaline, Eddie began to look in every direction for a path of flight or refuge from the killing frenzy. He sprinted towards a small, narrow fissure in the nearby reef and dived into it with the hope of taking cover there and shaking the barracuda in the tight, convoluted spaces of the coral. As he squeezed through the narrow opening, so did the barracuda, its tremendous and powerful body wedging into the confined space. Now the two were locked in an immovable standoff as the barracuda thrashed and snapped wildly in a struggle to devour its prey. Trapped and running perilously low on air, Eddie knew he had to act fast. Summoning every ounce of strength and courage, he started punching and kicking at the barracuda, trying to get blows into the creature's sensitive eyes and gills. Dazed by this quite unexpected assault, the barracuda recoiled for a moment, and Eddie took the opportunity to slip free and make a desperate dash for the surface. Breaking out of the water, he gasped for air, his arms and chest throbbing from the barracuda's savage attack. He scanned frantically across the surface and saw his boat only a short way away. Summoning up the last of his energy, Eddie swam towards it and hauled himself onto the deck, finally safe from the jaws of the relentless predator, which later went back to the deep waters. Still in shock, his heart racing wildly in his chest, Eddie examined his wounds once on board. He had a deep laceration in the right arm, punctured several times by these razor-sharp barracuda teeth. The wounds were very painful but not life-threatening, fortunately. They would no doubt require immediate medical treatment. Shaken, spent, and still in shock from the experience, Eddie radioed the Coast Guard and was attended within minutes. Assessing the condition of Eddie, the Coast Guard crew whisked him away to the nearest hospital, where the doctors could attend properly to his wounds. In the hospital, doctors cleaned and dressed Eddie's wounds, congratulating him on his presence of mind and his sheer resilience in the wake of such a harrowing, life-threatening attack. They were just in disbelief that he had escaped the jaws of one of the ocean's most formidable predators relatively unscathed. As Eddie recovered, he played the experience over and over again in his mind. For the first time in his life, he had witnessed the naked, brutal power of the sea, something he had learned as a basic lesson about underlying risk and unpredictability in the underwater world. It had been an experience he would never forget, and now he knew he would enter into every future spearfishing outing with a much sharper eye out for nature's sometimes deadly forces. Within days, Eddie's story spread from person to person within the local diving and fishing communities, its dramatic details easily captivating audiences. Many were impressed with his pluck and quick thinking during such a harrowing attack, while others warned of the risks of spearfishing in aggressive territories of marine life. It had been a very sober awakening for Eddie. All his life, he had prided himself on being an accomplished, seasoned spearfisherman who knew much about the ocean and its residents. Yet this encounter had served as a rude shake to his confidence that suddenly made him realize that any diver could become just another of the ocean's meals, no matter how seasoned. Eddie spent some time off spearfishing to recover physically and emotionally. He knew he had to process the trauma from the attack, regain his confidence in his ability to protect himself, and learn how to feel safe again within his underwater world. Eddie paused and asked himself one question during that time: whether he would ever return to a sport once so dear to him. Meanwhile, the huge barracuda that nailed Eddie roamed back into the big blue expanse of the Florida Keys, a powerful reminder of the delicate balance between man and nature. The incident reignited discussions within the diving and fishing communities about respecting apex ocean predators and creating greater education and awareness among recreational divers and spearfishermen. Eddie learned many valuable lessons from his encounter with the large barracuda. The incident left an indelible mark on his body and mind. The scars on his arm were a perpetual reminder of the ocean's mighty power and unpredictable nature. It was the perfect summer day in 2015 out in Vancouver Island, British Columbia, on that offshore water as the sun beamed with its brilliant sphere, heating the ocean surface. A group of tourists on the whale-watching Oceanic Explorer were eager to see the magnificent creatures they came for. The captain, Andrew Walters, 52, had spent over 10 years at the helm. He knew the local orca population inside and out and felt confident he could treat his passengers to an experience of a lifetime. With the boat gliding across the calm waves, Andrew scanned the horizon keenly, looking for any sign of killer whales. Suddenly, a black and white blurris, and the captain's face was aglow with what it meant. He announced to them, pointing at the orcas with as much reverential awe as a spoken voice can manage. It looked like a pod of about 6 or 7 orcas, and he told them to get their cameras ready. The 23 passengers, ranging from young families to retired couples, crammed along the railings, eyes riveted on the graceful bobbing and blowing of the whales. New additions to the list are newlyweds Emily and Jacob Sinlar, who decided to take this once-in-a-lifetime whale-watching experience as a way to spend their honeymoon. As the Oceanic Explorer approached the pod, passengers were awed by the killer whale's sheer size and power. Adults, with their big dorsal fins and powerful lean bodies, gave the impression of almost effortlessly riding the water while the younger calves playfully romped beside them. It was then that Andrew spotted something. One of the orcas seemed to be acting strangely, this large male who did not swim in synchrony like the rest of the pod, but swam all on his own in jerky, agitated movements. The captain mumbled that it was strange, frowning. Not once had he seen a killer whale act this peculiarly. It slightly made him uneasy. He sailed on ahead, looking apprehensively at them. He suddenly turned this huge male orca and swam directly toward the Oceanic Explorer. Because they did not understand what was happening, More photographs were taken, and the passengers gazed in awe at the whale's proximity. Andrew's heart raced. He knew exactly what the orca would do. With his urgent and commanding voice, he alerted everyone to get back. He told them the whale was not right and they were too close. They needed to get away from it. However, the warning came too late. In an instant, a bone-jarring impact struck as the killer whale rammed the side of the boat, causing the vessel to shudder violently. The force knocked several crew members off balance while panicked shouts filled the air. Andrew yelled for everyone to hold on as he struggled to keep the Oceanic Explorer steady amidst the chaos. The orca, now more furious than ever, assaulted the boat non-stop. With every hit, it slammed the boat harder than the last. The color washed out of the faces of the passengers, who were now overtaken with fear, holding on to handrails as they huddled together. An alarmed Emily was clinging to the railing with Jacob. She asked what was going on, crying and shaking her voice. The tourists thought this was supposed to be some fun trip. Jacob, his arm protective cast across his wife, could only shake his head, assuring Emma that they needed to be out there as fast as they could. Andrew, his fingers turning numb, searched his eyes for some escape. The attack had become focused, with the lone male from the pod zeroing in on his target. No longer distracted by anything else, this instinct-driven predator relentlessly rammed the Oceanic Explorer with fierce intensity, embodying the unstoppable force of a killing machine. He bellowed everyone to hold on, saying he would try to outmaneuver this whale, but he needed everyone to stay calm and do exactly as he said. There were silent nods of consent as the passengers' eyes remained baited, wide with fear of the unknown, heartbeats racing in their chests. Andrew yanked the tiller in sharp, sudden turns, his foot pressed to the floor as he desperately tried to outmaneuver the relentless orca snapping at the boat's wake. The ship surged and plunged into massive, foaming waves, each lifting the bow wildly as the exhausted passengers fought to stay on their feet amidst the chaos. Emily clung to Jacob, her nails biting into his skin as the boat pitched and yawed. She wanted to get off the ship, but her voice was barely audible over the roar of the waves and the thundering impacts. Jacob held her as tight as he could, fear apparent in his voice. He assured Emma they needed to trust the captain, as he knew what he was doing. Time seemed to slow, as did the Oceanic Explorer and orca, moving into a deadly ballet where every maneuver was thought to outmaneuver the other. The agitated nerves of the passengers watched in torturous silence, praying they might make it out of this ordeal alive. The orca moved more spastically all of a sudden, and Andrew spurred on. He yelled to everyone to brace themselves and hit the throttle to the maximum. The boat roared ahead, leaving behind the crazed orca in the wake of its path. The passengers erupted in cheers and applause. Their faces were etched with relief as the Oceanic Explorer finally drew some distance from the killer whale. Wiping his face on one sleeve, beads of sweat stinging at his eyes, Andrew finally allowed himself a small swell of triumph. Yet he knew their ordeal was far from over. The orca did not give up the chase. His big body slammed through the waves with unnerving speed. With the speedboat going full throttle, Andrew's face became determined. Andrew muttered that they could not outrun it forever, looking for an idea. They needed to find a way to lose it. He could visualize safety from the relentless orca somewhere across the open ocean, where they could hole up to escape it. But there was hardly any refuge, and the nearest land was miles away. Andrew's mind raced as the Oceanic Explorer sped away in desperation, the massive orca closing the gap with terrifying speed. He frantically searched his thoughts for a solution. Anything that could shake off the relentless pursuit of the vengeful killer whale. Each second felt like an eternity as he struggled to devise a plan, knowing that the creature's powerful jaws drew ever closer. Scanning the horizon, Andrew spotted a small cove in the distance, its sheltered waters offering a potential refuge. Without hesitation, he steered the boat towards the inlet, praying they could lose the orca and allow the passengers to catch their breath. As the Oceanic Explorer entered the cove, the crew breathed a sigh of relief. The orca, seemingly confused by the sudden change in terrain, slowed its pursuit and began circling the mouth of the inlet. Andrew told everyone to stay calm, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He said they managed to lose the whale that relented to the waters. The passengers, their nerves frayed, tentatively began to relax, their grip on the railings loosening as the boat came to a gentle stop. Emily and Jacob embraced, their hearts finally starting to slow. That was the scariest thing they ever experienced. As the crew began to assess the damage to the Oceanic Explorer, Andrew stepped out onto the deck, his eyes fixed on the orca still circling the cove. He shook his head, a newfound respect for the powerful creature washing over him. Turning his gaze to the passengers, Andrew couldn't help but feel deeply grateful. He was just glad they all made it out of this unscathed. He smiled reassuringly, saying it was a close call, but they were safe now, which mattered most. The passengers, their nerves slowly settling, began to nod in agreement. They had faced a harrowing encounter with a wild animal, but emerged unharmed through their captain's quick thinking and skilled maneuvering. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the sheltered cove, the Oceanic Explorer crew assessed the damage and planned their next move. For Emily and Jacob, the honeymoon adventure had taken an unexpected and terrifying turn, but in the end, they were grateful to have survived the ordeal. As the Oceanic Explorer set sail again, all the passengers looked towards the horizon with a renewed sense of wonder and appreciation for the ocean's unpredictable beauty.